All right. Thank you so much for watching Sashiko Live Streaming. This is Atsushi. Sorry to be late a little bit. The Japanese session went a little bit over time. I apologize for that. I will start the Japanese, not at the Instagram right now. I hope you can hear this. Okay. Ah, all right. Thank you so much. This is the Instagram. Thank you so much for the live. Thank you so much for coming to the live streaming. This is Atsushi, and this is the Sashiko Live that I will be doing the Sashiko stitching while I talk about Sashiko. I appreciate all of the all of the reaction to my stories about the topics. I will talk about the request one by one. Some of the requests were how to start Sashiko. Please follow this account. Please follow my YouTube videos. There are a lot of information. There are a lot of tutorials about how to start Sashiko, how to enjoy Sashiko. So I probably won't talk about it in this live streaming. Um, there was a request to talk about my family, my personal information. But I might talk about it sometimes, but at the same time, it's kind of I usually share my private stories on Patreon where I feel a little bit more safe. I learned that website, not a website, the internet can be somewhere pretty scary. So I do share a lot of personal story where I'm from, how I got into Sashiko, how I'm in the U.S. right now. Those are shared on the Patreon as the kind of article, not the videos yet. But therefore, I might, I may talk about it sometimes, but I may not talk about it much. Um, Sakura, I'm sorry. Today, I would like to talk about my perspective a little bit of how to share Sashiko. Um, I talk about the cultural appropriation from time to time, and some I received two extreme reaction. One is more like, "Thank you for saying that." One is, "How could you say that?" It is very interesting to receive completely two other two completely different feedback. Well, you understand my point of my view of cultural appropriation in Sashiko. I want you to call your stitching Sashiko when you respect the Japanese culture behind it. Try to respect it. You don't have to even respect it. I want you to try to respect what the Japanese um, Sashiko is, or Japanese culture is behind Sashiko. So everything else is kind of secondary. If you there's no specific things I ask you to do, there's no specific qualification you have to go through, nothing. Just if you think that you respect Japanese culture or Japanese people behind the word of Sashiko, go ahead. I don't have any. You don't even have to say Sashiko inspired, Sashiko like stitching. It's if you do not care about anybody or anything behind the word Sashiko, then that's gonna be a problem. And I have to. Well, there are some cases that they said they don't care about. Why they said that? Why did they have to know about Japanese culture when they use the word sashiko? And my question was, why did they have to use the word sashiko then? So that's the only case I was kind of questioning them. But besides that, I'm pretty flexible about it. And today I like to talk about a little bit about sashiko getting really popular, right? Okay, so I started teaching sashiko in 2017 with with receiving a request from people who are interested in sashiko. Back then, I didn't know what to teach. I did not know what to teach, and then after a few workshops, I just realized that it is how to make the even stitches in a good speed like I do here over the live streaming. And it is about the posture, it is about rhythm, it is about how to move your needles. I probably taught that movement for more than 300 people in 3 years, including online and in-person workshop. Interestingly, well, it's actually not interestingly, but I have never met anybody who knew it before they took my workshop. Well, it is understandable because they wouldn't come to my workshop if they know how to do Sashiko stitching. So in the 300 people, those 300s of opportunities, I always find some discoveries within themselves and with me too. So I just realized that I realized that this Sashiko stitching style, posture, technique is kind of unique. I have not seen any I had not seen any pictures of somebody stitching like I do or the videos like I do. I am not claiming that this is the technique I invented. This is not the technique I invented. This is not the technique I own. It probably was everywhere in Japan. There were, many people who probably stitched like I did. I don't know who and I don't know how, but there are a lot of Japanese people. Like it was everywhere. It was the common Japanese practice, but using this thumb and middle finger is a bit unique. Some Japanese sashiko stitches stitch like this. There's nothing wrong with that, but that's not the style I teach, or that's not the style I share. And there's a reason I share why I don't. There's a reason why I do not teach this style. And some sashiko stitchers might use the this thimble, but with the index finger like this. This is what my mom does. In fact, this is what my family business did. So it's not middle finger. What I want to tell you today is that I stood seeing the photo or video of people using the middle finger and thumb, and they do not mention my name. It is perfectly to copy, it is perfectly to mimic what I do. I encourage you to mimic what I do. I want to share how easy, how painless, how peaceful it is to have this running stitch. So I want you to learn how to do it by looking how or even mimicking it. But doesn't mean that I give up the copyright. So if you are looking at this running stitch and if you claim this that you are like, especially if you are teaching or writing for somebody else, as if that as if you invented or you learned somebody else, um please, I think they should refer who they learned from, at least, I guess. I think it's fair to ask, right? um I'm not asking for any like royalty, nothing. I'm just asking you to share who you learn from, because I don't want them to teach something completely different from what I teach, and I want them to respect the origin too. I have not, I really didn't see this running stitch before 2018, and I now started seeing those photos and videos recently. So it is perfectly fine if they take my workshop. I actually encourage them to teach their stitching within their community. So I really don't mind them teaching or showing it. I just want them to mention my name so that I can support or I can check. And it's unethical to say that they invented it too, because there's a lot of work here as well. So what I want to say is that it is very free. You can mimic, you can copy, you can do whatever you want by looking at this. That's my goal. Otherwise, I wouldn't share. I shouldn't share that. But at the same time, I have not give up any copyrights, and it is probably not a problem. It's very ethical to address who you learn from, who you're referring from, referring to. I mean, if you have any other teachers who teach exactly the same thing like this from Japan, that's perfectly fine. You don't even have to mention that. But I think it is more valid to the other people who you learn to address who you learn from, especially if they're Japanese. It's probably a better idea to do so. I just want to make sure that if they copy from me, I want them to address it. If they do learn it from somebody else, I actually want to learn who they learned from because I have been kind of lonely about this running stitch. So if there's any Japanese teacher who teach this, I would like to be a friend. I really would like to be a friend of those people. Many people think that it's unique, right? Unique running stitch with using this thimble, this rhythm. I do have an online class to teach you this. Anybody can do it. Anybody can do it once they get the kind of hint or personal attention. At the same time, as anybody can do it just by looking at it too. It's not that difficult. It's not rocket science. It's very, very easy. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that I give up everything. Especially the Sashiko part, the Japanese culture, which respect the respect, huh? Which appreciate the respect each other. It's not an apprenticeship, but it is probably better to. It is more likely to address who they learn from in Japanese culture. I don't know about that in Western culture, but I think Western culture it's about legal issue, right? Like who owns the authority, who owns the copyright. Um, it's not about the respect or appreciation. It's probably a law that controls. I understand that. I understand that. But at the same time, I do not want to give up the Japanese characteristic of Sashiko, so I do not use those power to control things. I will keep asking to be respectful to Japanese culture so that we can keep these techniques behind. So that's one thing I'm asking. Like if you are learning Sashiko from me, that's perfectly fine to share that online after you learn that. I mean, if you want to teach, you know, I might be able to help instead of you just teaching out of nowhere. Regardless, it would be nice to hear from you instead of just sharing it as if that's some skills that you learned when you invented by yourself. I learned this technique from a kind of not the mainstream of my family artisans. I don't think she would appreciate sharing her name. So the mainstream was actually not the middle finger; it's the index finger and thumb. Yeah. It's very interesting. Like before 2013, I was not allowed to share any of these techniques. So I didn't have any workshop. Well, that's another reason that I was not on the surface of internet until recently. I was not allowed to do anything. I was not allowed to do no, not nothing. Before 2013, the family business I was in did not allow to keep sharing. They were very afraid of being copied or mimicked. So they really didn't let me do anything. However, after the internet kicks in, I just realized that trying to keep secret is actually not good in terms of appreciating the culture, because anybody can say anything in this world right now. So if we do not share the technique or even culture with them, like, whatever we do, there will be somebody else who will try to repaint that or re-fulfill with something else and call it something Sashiko. And I didn't like it. So at the same time, after 2013, I pretty much lost everything that I had to protect. And now I don't even have to protect myself because my wife works as full time. So I don't have to worry about money as I used to. So I don't have to really worry about how to protect the copyrights or even asset. My goal is to share now. Like I keep saying, like share, share, share. Otherwise, I wouldn't do the live streaming like this. Like anybody can copy this, anybody can mimic this, anybody can do anything. What I'm asking is a little bit of citation, little bit of like a referring the name so we can spread it more. Does it make sense? I would like I really appreciate to have more friend. It's kind of creepy, but I I enjoy stitching with the others. I like talking to people who like Sashiko. So I wanna just have a friend. And in order to have a more friend, I want if only if they are referring my videos or anything I do, I would wanna be included. There we go. That's the word. I wanna be included. There we go. Thank you for waiting. I wanna be included. So please cite my name if you learn from me, or if you watch and if you decided to mimic my stitching, please try to refer my name somewhere. Sorry, I completely lost the track of the comments. YouTube is good. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh, thank you so much for the reply. Yep, I have a website called upcyclestitches.com. I usually put the link on the live streaming not after the archives, so you can go there. But upcyclestitches.com, it's not that difficult to find, and I have a thimble there. North Lawn, thank you so much for. Wow, thank you so much for purchasing. Thank you so much for purchasing from us. It will support us. It will support me a lot. Yes. So thank you so much. That makes a lot of sense to me, and very important aspect of how cultural heritage and the traditional craft are shared on the internet. Yes. Thank you. That's it. Interesting hearing about family business keeping secret. I totally understand what you mean by including. Yes, the Japanese are very focused on the family. Um, you probably have heard about the one thread, not thread, one thread of the family tree. Uh, Sorry. There's a one thread of the family tree. Like, for example, the firstborn child will be the big tree, the main tree of the family, and the second-born child will be the branch of the main family. And the girl who goes to the other, who married to the other man, will leave that family tree and be part of the other tree. I know this is effed up. This is very not contemporary way to describe that, but that's the how Japanese family registry work. I married to somebody non-Japanese. She's not even there because she was not born in Japan. So I married to somebody who does not exist in Japanese family registry. Yet I have a daughter who is Japanese. So technically speaking, I kind of produced her by myself. No, I of course I have a wife and I have a beautiful daughter. But in Japanese family registry, that's how it is registered. So that's how Japanese people kind of focus on the family. Many family has their own secret. Some people, some family keep it as their own secret. Some people make it as a business. Some people try to make money out of it. You know, it's up to them. And biggest thing is I think we call it kabuki, or like Japanese traditional performing art. Anybody can be part of those family, but it takes a lot of time and effort to be part of that. It's actually, I think, in order to play the main part of those kabuki performance, you have to be the part of the family. Of course, the easiest way is to be born as the part of the family, but at the same time, you probably have to be the part of the family to play on that um no, that performance. So it is very much family oriented, and I'm from that. The same times I really like to share. That I rather share than lose it. Does it make sense? I rather share than lose it, especially in this age. Not many people, even in Japan, does sashiko stitching. So I rather share it and then lose it. So that's how I started sharing. And if I share, part of me, of course, wanted to be acknowledged. At the same time, is I want to make sure that I am sharing the things I would like to share. Like if I end up with sharing something completely different, then that's kind of sad. So if people sharing the exactly same Sashiko running stitch, which they learned from somebody else, I don't have any problem with that. But it is kind of weird because I have never seen the same stitches um, anywhere else before 2019. No, I don't think so. Well, I mean, that's just probably only me. But it's kind of coincidence that my account gets popular, Sashiko is getting popular. I've been doing the live streaming for 2 years by now, and then people started sharing the exactly same, not exactly, but the very, very similar running stitch on their website, on their classes, on their photos, on their phone. That little bit. It's interesting to see that. So, and I'm not really accusing them for that. I'm asking to be a little bit more respectful for that. What I'm asking is just to refer the name. It's always fascinating to hear about how Japanese society works, but damn it, damn it must be very hard to live by such rules. Ay ay, you got it. It's very difficult to live within that. Well, they don't realize how difficult it is to live in that rule because they don't get outside of that routine. But there's a reason that we have very low low diversity rate in Japan. We do not really accept the foreigners. We do not accept other. I mean, the LGBTQ rate is super, like not the rate. LGBTQ understanding of LGBTQ is very low in Japan. The gender equality is quite horrible still in Japan. So I mean, I'm proud of Japan. I really like Japanese culture. I do love Japanese culture. At the same time, I do I love everything about Japanese culture? Probably like 70-30. I hate 70% and I love 30%. But the love to 30% is quite huge. Stitches must always be straight, or the stitches can be any It can be curve. It can be. For this, have I've been doing a lot of running straight running stitch because I'm lazy. But the pattern can be anything. I mean, it's live streaming. I focus on talking. I mean, I'm talking in the second language, so I usually do not do the complex pattern because I want to focus on talking. But the pattern can be anything. And would traditional family business in Japan also have had a apprentice from the outside, or would the craft preferably have been passed on only within the family, generally speaking? Um, generally speaking, it depends on the time of the era. Like for example, right now, it is very difficult to force the family, the firstborn child, to take over the family business, right? Like they have a choice right now. So it is quite difficult to expect all the firstborn child, or for that matter, any child, to take over the family business. So it is more common to accept apprentice or the next generation from outside. Um, Sake brewery, sometimes sake brewery have the 当時って英語じゃない、だーだーと there's a person who is in charge of making sake, and there were some news that a foreigner, I think he was American, became that, and that was a big deal in Japan because that didn't happen before. Regardless, it is recommended to be the part of family if they want to be the next one. So either they marry or either they become the, do we call it foster child? Like no, adaptation might be the good way to do that. But before 2000, or like when I was a child, we kind of had a mutual agreement that a firstborn child take over the family business. That's how I was raised. I mean, I didn't have any choice. I had a choice, but I didn't have a choice. Does it make sense? I didn't have a. Of course, I had a choice, but if I used that freedom, I would have been considered as the horrible child. So, to answer your question, it is strongly recommended. Generally speaking, it is strongly recommended to be born there, and then if you're born there, probably you get a priority first. If not, it's up to the family business, top of the family business. Either they want to pass it down to somebody else, or unfortunately, many business closes and ends that history there. It is very bad. It's the one of the horrible things to do to. There's one thing, the pretty horrible things to do in Japanese culture is to bother somebody else. So many people would rather close the business than asking somebody to get into the trouble. So as long as I know, many people, many families decided to discontinue instead of bankrupting. They decide to discontinue their traditions, and yeah, like I there's always news in Japan that the big kimono manufacturers are looking for somebody to take over their factory or their studios. Usually those, like, the bigger the business become, the more debt they might have, so there are not that many people who wants to take that over too. So it's between the business and the family and tradition. There are a lot of factors, but they try their best to protect it, and so did I, so did my family, in a different way. My conclusion is to share so that this culture itself will survive in next 10 years, I hope. Not 10 years, next 100 years, until my daughter can pass it down to somebody else, which she might not. That's her choice. But what I want to say that is that if you're learning from this video, or precisely me, I want you to include me. I don't think it's too much to ask. I mean, if you have anybody else, completely different person, that's perfectly fine. I mean, I'm not asking you to involve, but in this world, anybody can say anything in any way. Bigger voice get more attention. The powerful people get more attention. That's how it works. But at the same time, the internet adds and enable to those small people to speak up. Ha! English is so difficult. So that's my message to the world. If you can respect the others, please do so. I mean, if you're copying, you don't want to destroy the original. If you're mimicking, don't destroy the original. I mean, you can claim it you're the original, but you know, you need a little balance if that's what they are doing. By the way, I'm not saying I'm the original. Please do not get me wrong. I am not saying I'm the original. This is from many, many, many family practice, and also I'm not the original. It happened everywhere. Sashiko happened in Japan, everywhere in Japan. I'm not the only one who stitched like this. I don't know many. That's why I'm kind of saying that, but I'm not the only one. There can be a lot of misunderstanding, and I don't want to be the authority. If you think that I'm trying to be authority, that's wrong. I just want to share, and I want to. Let me be a little bit creepy. Let me be a little bit creepy. This is my honest feeling, and it's kind of creepy. I want a friend. I want to have a friend. I have been lonely in Sashiko for the last 30 years, so it's good to ask for the friend. If the family wanted us to be secretive, I couldn't have a friend. Now I can, and I want to just stitch together with fun. That's what I share on my live streaming, on my workshop, on my live online class. I share how to enjoy Sashiko together. Once you learn Sashiko from me or this, like the posture I do, you can stitch while doing something. That's the best part. I do not focus on these each stitches. I really don't pay attention. The hand does it by itself. So it's the rhythm. You do not measure how thin you want to cut the onion when you slice the onion. You just let the hand move like this. So when you learn the posture, you can stitch like autopilot, cruise control, you name it. Just it happens by itself. You can focus on talking, watching TV, pretending to listening to your wife, whatever. So that's how I enjoy this time. Mm, So it's not like the sashiko is not the meditative practice, but I become meditative after doing sashiko. I hope it makes sense. Okay, let me go back to the. Where's the others? Oops, sorry. This is so okay. Let's start it together. Well, the friend who shares the same value, so if you could take the workshop, that'd be great. It's the thing, like, the friendship shouldn't be give and take. I want to have like a mutual friendship. So if a friend keeps asking how to do it, then that's not kind of a good friendship, in my opinion. So that's why I do not invite as of now. I mean, sorry. As of now, I only invite the people who takes the workshop, like who knows how to stitch like we do, to the like an online gathering, which I haven't done for a long time. I'm sorry. Like the COVID is killing this time. Like I used to have more time, but I don't. Anyway, so I don't want to teach in the gathering, but probably many people will ask how we stitch together. Like if I'm stitching like this in front of you, and if you have a chance to talk to me in person, you would ask. I don't blame. You would. I mean, you should. That's the opportunity. You might say like how to do that, how to do. That's perfectly fine to ask. I know that's really human nature. But that's not the point. That's not the quite friendship yet, right? And I don't want to be like me in the meeting, like, oh, I don't want to share, I don't want to teach you. Of course, I want to teach you if that happens. I'm not sharing because I learned that sharing for free can create a lot of issues after that. So that's if you could take the online class, that's the best way because you'll learn how to do stitch like this, and then you will probably don't have to pay attention to your stitches much. If you have to pay attention after taking workshop, then please let me know because I have to teach you that. So that's that. Stitches like requires. I'm asking to mention the name if somebody is copying exactly what I do when they share that. And I mean, they can of course claim that they invented it or they learned from somebody else, but from my experience, I have not seen so well. Let me be kind of precise. I have not seen anybody who stitched like this in my real life. I've seen the photo showing how to use this middle finger thimble, but not the way I hold the needle. And some book described to hold the needles with the middle finger and index finger, middle finger and thumb. But I don't. It's just simply I just don't know. There might be, there might not be, but this posture is something I have never seen sharing it until today. So if you could actually let me know who you learn from, who they learn from, that's another pleasure to have. I hope it's not too much to ask. I mean, I don't think it's too much to ask. It's way to protect, way to appreciate the culture. I hope it makes sense. Ah, how long have I been stitching? 37. Yeah, Japanese culture is kind of effed up for that. Messed up. There we go. I'm sorry. Ooh, what am I doing here? I just don't want them to ignore the other stories around Sashiko. Like, it requires a lot of understanding of. The thing I was talking in the previous. Do you ever break your needle doing that kind of hand movement? Break this needle? This needle? Depends. When I was doing the 3 layers of denim, but not so often. Really, not so often. This needle is very. I don't forget. I don't remember that word in English. It's kind of flexible. It's very bendable. So as long as you don't use pliers, a pair of pliers, or don't use teeth because it's gonna hurt your teeth. As long as you don't use the plier to pull or no, I'm sorry. To answer your question, no. Very berry. Once in a year. Oh, not even that. Less than that. Have I ever broke my needle? Probably not. Not that I remember. Sorry, that's not a very good answer, but no, not really. There are two reasons. First, I use a good needle. Second, I listen to the fabric. I really listen to that's my strength. I can talk to the fabric. I can talk to the needles too. So when the needle said I don't want to do it, or needle said that's too much, I can really stop it. I can feel it. That's too much. I know it sounds creepy, but I that's that's what I do. Um, so I really don't push it. If the needles or fabrics are resisting too much, or saying they like I don't want to do it anymore, I stop. That's why I probably don't break the needles that much. But it can. It does. It can break. The needle is not perfect, so if you don't listen enough, or if you try to push it through, it could break the needle. But at the same time, the needle quality is a big deal too. But again, not in this hand movement. Probably when you use prior. I was gonna talk about something I completely forgot. Oh yeah, yes. So I mentioned about cultural appropriation in the beginning of this live streaming. I encourage you to call your Sashiko stitching when you try to understand or respect Japanese culture. This is clear, right? Like this is crystal clear. Many people get upset when when I use the word cultural appropriation. They just jump on that topic and say, "How could you say that?" I said nothing. I said nothing, and I said just why don't you just please respect the Japanese culture before using that? For that matter, I even encourage you to call it Sashiko stitching or Sashiko boro if you want to, of course, if you want to. And I don't I don't see any point of calling your stitching Sashiko inspired or Sashiko like or bolo inspired. I just want you to keep learning what the Japanese culture behind it so that the actual word will not lose its meaning. I don't want it to be different. I really don't want it to be different. That's it. So I have an example about boro. Many people enjoy boro. I understand boro is beautiful. It's kind of like art. It's a like reduce, recycle. I'm sorry, reduce, recycle, reuse, and respect. That's the mottainai's interpretation in English. The mottainai has more meaning, so it's one of that interpretation. But it is good to many aspects like sustainability, slow fashion. That catches a lot of keywords. But for Japanese people, boro is not that fancy things. It's kind of a shame or very negative, dirty things to do. So I really don't see that photo much. But when I see the photo of people using boro or saying boro inspired pieces as the placemat, like something like a placemat to have under the food, I feel very disgusted. It's they are probably very clean. They're very clean. There's nothing wrong with it. I mean, you of course clean that. It doesn't probably stink. And they might say that it's like Boro inspired, so there's nothing wrong with it. But if they are inspired by Boro, I want them to understand. I want them to try to understand, try to learn how the Japanese people would have felt about the Boro putting under the food. It's a little bit like wearing the Boro is good. Like I'm making the scarf with vintage fabric, but food is something very weird. Not a good weird. It's very bad weird. It's like a drinking a water from used toilet. I mean, you wash so clean. You use the chlorine. You use the cleanest, and it's very, very, very clean. You explain that it's super clean. That there's nothing wrong with drinking water from that. But it's kind of disgusting, isn't it? That's how I feel about boro under the food. I mean, on the table is fine. I hope it's not that fine, but that's how we think about it. I dye Sashiko thread with avocado seed. Yes, this Shinobu-san from Japan is very good natural dye uh, artisan. Actually, she's a rising artisan. I'm asking her to help us out. Her thread will come out soon on my website. Oh, if there was no COVID, I would have introduced her much earlier. But because the COVID, the international package is not really doing well. Good job. There we go. The perception of borrow is one of example how time changes and evolve things. A good example probably would be jeans. In Japan, Americana and jeans are held in high regard. They make best jeans nowadays. But in the US, for a long time, jeans had seemed to workwear and young people's clothes. Yes, so I don't mind. I really don't mind people using the borrow as the word for fashion. You might find it contradicting. But please hear me out. Many people worry about me when the big company like Nike made a Sashiko sneakers, borrow sneakers, and many the big companies, capitals. There are many brands using borrow as the trend. I don't mind. That might sound very contradicting, but I do not mind. I really don't mind. Go ahead. I mean, that's a good because those people who purchase Sashiko sneakers or borrow jackets are not the people who enjoy Sashiko. They might, but they're not the main audience. I don't think those people who spend like $10,000 for the borrow jacket by top brand, which I used to collaborate, they don't come to do Sashiko. I mean, they might, but that's great. They will probably learn from the basic. So then that's borrowed trend is probably temporarily. Sashiko trend is probably temporarily. So the people who loved Sashiko Nike sneaker will move on to something else when they decided to focus on something else. So they will not change the culture of Sashiko as long as we keep saying that. As long as the actual Sashiko stitcher keep sharing what Sashiko is, the culture will not be different because they are just there. They like sneakers, they like fashion, they like something else completely. They're not gonna affect the Sashiko. The problem is that people who think they know Sashiko are borrow. Does it make sense? Because they practice Sashiko, they practice borrow every single day. I respect them, I like them, I want to be friends with them, but I want them to also learn what Sashiko is, what borrow is for Japanese people, because they have a possibility, a risk, actually, we call it risk, innocently, unintentionally overpaint the culture. And that's something I really worry about. So, about the borrow on under the food, it is very, very common sense for many Japanese people, especially if the elder people who actually had to go through the borrow period, they would hate that. And I don't think it's only my opinion. Many people don't like that in Japanese, and that's very common sense. But under the name of freedom of expression or art, that feeling of disgusting will be ignored. That is a little problem. The big fashion trend, big fashion brand, those are doing that for money. And I'm perfectly fine with that. And that they're the trend. The trend will not significantly change. Well, they might, but it's not something I will wanna be. I don't wanna say bitchy, but I would. I don't. I'm not being bitchy. I don't wanna be articulate about it. Whoopsie. But I'm just worried about those people who thinks, including myself. I don't want to share any selfish or center centralized. I don't want to be me centered opinion is not something I would like to share. I want to always make sure that if my opinion, if my feeling is common in Japanese people as well. So I asked the Japanese people if it is okay to put the fancy dinner on the boro, and they said no. And that's some people say yes, some Japanese people say yes, but most of the people who I know who practice sashiko, who knows about boro, say no. And if I don't mind discussing about it. I just want to make sure that I say something about it instead of observing people understanding as the art. It is the art. It can be the art, but sometimes it carries the image, and we need to understand the image too. Whew, I hope it makes sense. Hello Ben. That's lovely to hear. Here is in Texas, avocados are very plentiful, so the opportunity to die with the cedar. The avocado makes a very, very good pink color. I used to kind of offer her natural dye thread, but it got sold out and I cannot restock it because of the COVID. But yeah, try the avocado dye. It's very cute. It's very beautiful pink, I believe. Yeah. Wow, I cannot believe it has been almost a year since I met you in Austin. Ay, ay. The world changed a lot after that. Okay, has been almost 1 hour, so I will have to go. I'll probably do one more line. I hope I am. The English is my second language, so I sometimes make a lot of misunderstanding. I try my best to not to make that, but I try to be as clear as possible. But only two things. If I can summarize it, if I encourage you to mimic what I do, I mean, that'd be great. That'd be great if you could take the online class and support us to keep sharing that. That's great. But if you don't, everybody has different situations. The financial issues, logistic issues, location issues, language issues. There are a lot of issues around. So if you want to just mimic what I do just by watching it, please go ahead. You can. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm not gonna say I'm sharing, by the way. I'm sharing already, so you can of course copy it. You can say you can learn from that, and many people did it, and they gave me the message. They gave me some photos with that. I appreciate it. It's very nice of them to do that. However, if you decided to teach or show it to the other people how you stitch, please mention my name. I think that's not too much to ask. Uh, I'm not asking any compensation, any commissions, nothing. Just show that, just tell you get this idea from. Just, share where you get it from. So if they're interested, they can come to me. Of course, they can learn from you, but also they can come to me. So that's the one thing. And the second thing is that please try to learn the Japanese culture. It is very messed up. The more than you think. It is very bad, which is deep, right? Like it's not shallow. Who think that a boro is the negative word? It is a negative word. It associated with dirt. So if you want to call your stitching Sashiko or Boro, go ahead. Just go ahead. Don't even say like inspired. Like I don't use inspired. If you wanna call your stitching Sashiko, please go ahead. Just try to respect the Japanese culture behind it. And I don't want you to be like a perfect the Japanese culture master. And I'm not even asking you to learn the Japanese language too. Of course, it would be great if you can learn the Japanese language. If you can read Japanese, that'd be great. But that's not what I'm asking. Just try. Try to listen. Try to read. Try to learn just a little by little bit. So, Sashiko is the little stop. Doubt it. Again, I'll say that. Sashiko is translated to in English. It is a little stubs. Are you sure about that? Are you sure? The publication is not sometimes all right. Are you sure about that? Wikipedia can be wrong. That's what I'm asking. Just keep doubting, not a doubting, keep learning. That's what I'm doing. Like I don't know if the Sashiko is the little stub. There might be something else. The reason I'm saying that is Sashiko is not an established culture. It's not an established tradition. So it's not like the tea ceremony or flower arrangement. There's no single structure. That's why there's no right and wrong. Any stitching can be sashiko if one respects the Japanese culture because it's Japanese. So since there's no right and wrong, can be anything. That's a very difficult part. But there's no right and wrong doesn't mean that whatever is good. It's very difficult. So we have to know more, and I'm trying to learn more. I have very big sashiko histories experience, but that's very much focused on one type of sashiko. That's why I'm trying to learn more around it. And I want to do the same if you like to call your stitching sashiko. And that's perfectly fine to call your stitching sashiko. I talk about the cultural appropriation and that, included using the name. I want to be careful about it. But my point is that don't use inspired or like or any other word to avoid learning, to make excuse to learning from. Only things I'm asking is learning and sharing. Oh, that's a nice summary. I didn't stitch more, but that was a very nice summary. So this is the that's a lot of stitching while talking. You can see all of the process. I didn't stitch outside of the live streaming much. So this is this stitching I have been doing on the live. You can see how I did it. You can see how running stitch works. And I will come back. I probably have to finish this much a little later. I might finish it outside of the live. I don't know what to do, but I need this to cover my garage door. It's getting cold. And this is the Boro scarf, Boro 2B scarf. It's not a Boro quite yet, but I keep using this. I have been using it as a scarf, and then there's a little damage here. If you can see that, and I'm just keep fixing, and probably 10 years, 20 years from now, it's gonna look like Boro. I don't want to eat anything on this because it's gonna have a lot of sweat from me. That's how it works. All right, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a. Oh, I'm sorry, there was one question. I wonder if Boro is dirt, but Sashiko is technique. Is there high-end Japanese embroidery style, like how rich people in old Japanese embroidery? Of course there are. Just Google the Japanese embroidery. That's a completely different side of the Japanese embroidery. There are a lot of in between. There's a big tradition called wasai, Japanese stitch. It's a Japanese style stitching or tailoring. It's the culture, it's the technique, it's the traditional technique to make the kimono specifically. It's not the tailoring the pattern cloth, it's the specific technique to make kimono. And that is more like artisan. It's the more structured artisanship. And there's another category called Japanese embroidery. They're so beautiful. I don't know how to do it, but they're so beautiful. And yep, Japanese name broccoli, wasai, and sashiko is more like it's like a mashed potato in your I don't know, like it's very common. Like every family has different recipes. It's not like eating out, it's just there. All right, thank you so much and have a good weekend. Bye bye. Oh, actually, I have to stop the Instagram first. I'm sorry. Instagram first. Sorry about that. I hope this Instagram will be. Oh. Instagram seems to have like a 30, 60 minutes restriction, and if I go over, they stop it. I will finish the Instagram and YouTube soon. Just a second. I'm sorry. I hope I answered all of the questions for today. I received a lot of questions on my Instagram, and I will answer one by one. But for now, I will go off the live streaming. Okay, I will try to come back next Friday as well. And have a good weekend. Bye bye. Thank you.